What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Back to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Part 2 of today's show. Just wrapped up part 1. Hopefully you guys will be able to tune into that on demand on bsn716.podbean.com. That'll be uploaded once the whole product is finished. You can also tune into the parts of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast episodes. If there's a certain part that you want to listen to, whether it be the MMA coverage, the NHL coverage, the NFL coverage that I'll be putting out, or that I have put out the last 2 years that I've been doing this podcast, you can check that out on YouTube at the Thomas Take Sports Podcast channel. So thank you all for joining me once again. I'm Ryan Thomas, recording from a dumpy little studio in Lockport, New York. 24, soon to be 25-year-old sports journalist, sports writer from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Bills fanatic, to say the least. Buffalo sports nut. Journalism major. Everything. So, definitely thank you all for joining me today. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Buffalo Bills today, and I did that in part 1, but I also wanted to talk about the Buffalo Sabres. Big question hanging over the team right now is whether they will bring back Dan Bylsma. And I think they will, based on the fact that Bylsma has $9 million left on his head coaching contract. Terry has already written checks for guys that were supposed to be here that were not here, or that are not here currently. And Bylsma, I don't think he is ready to make him be one of the next casualties. So, or highly paid casualties, I should say. So, I think Bylsma is going to stay. But if I were to pick one guy that I would want here to be the head coach of the Buffalo Sabres, it would be former Buffalo Sabre Philip Francis Housley, better known as, obviously, Phil Housley. Now, Phil Housley currently is the assistant coach for the Nashville Predators. They have had a resurgence these last few years, really building the brand of their hockey franchise. They have Peter Laviolette as their head coach, formerly of the Carolina Hurricanes, formerly of the New York Rangers. I thought Laviolette was on the... No, you know what? I'm wrong. It was, yeah. Formerly of the New York Rangers. I got him confused with the old Hurricanes coach. But yeah, head coach of the Rangers, coached the Flyers. So I was right. Coached the Rangers and the Flyers. So, he did coach Carolina. Okay. Yeah, I'm reading this off. I'm reading what player and coach. I was reading when he was a player. My bad. Sorry about that. Coached the Hurricanes to a Stanley Cup in 2006. That was the year they inexplicably beat the Buffalo Sabres in the Eastern Conference Finals. So that was about Laviolette. Phil Housley. Back to Housley. Housley is the assistant coach for the Nashville Predators. And reason why I think Phil Housley would be a decent head coach for the Buffalo Sabres is not because of the fact that he played here. I think that's a part of it. That's a bit of it. But in terms of the fact that he was one of the best U.S.-born defensemen of his era, on head coaching a team that has real problems on the defensive side of hockey, on the blue line. Really, Rasmus Ristolainen is the only guy to speak of that really consistently, game in and game out, puts up B-level play. And I say B-level only because he's still young, and I say B-level only because he got bogged down by the amount of minutes that he had to continue to play due to the fact that there was no slack being picked up from the other 5 guys in the defensive unit for the Buffalo Sabres. McCabe played pretty well in spades. Kulikov got better as the season went along as he came off that injury. But Ristolainen, I would say, is the consensus number 1 defenseman on this Buffalo Sabres team. And that doesn't mean that he's the consensus number 1 defenseman on another NHL team, because he probably isn't. But on this team right now, Rasmus Ristolainen is the number one defenseman on this team. And that's a problem for the reasons that I just stated and for the fact that we want to see this team grow. We want to see this team win. We're not at a point where we're ready to tank anymore. We're at a point where we really need to get back to the winning ways at Seymour Knox Plaza at the KeyBank Center for the Buffalo Sabres. So Phil Housley brings this pedigree of being a defensive coach, being a guy that has helped guys like PK Subban on the National Predators, being a guy that I think has committed his entire life to hockey, playing for the Sabres, the Jets, the Blues, the Flames, the Devils, the Capitals, the Blackhawks, and last but not least the Maple Leafs. 8 teams in about a 21-year career. Represented the United States in the 1996 World Cup of Hockey, represented the United States in the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City in 2002. So this is a guy that I think has been in the wings for quite some time. He was a part of the IIHF Under-20 Championship in 2013. And he was a part of the 2013 Men's World Hockey Championships. So he's been a part of several high-ranking international Team USA teams, and I think that he's a guy that would come in here and make things happen. What's really amazing is I'm looking at the trade that sent him from Buffalo to the Winnipeg Jets. Buffalo traded him along with Scott Arnell and Jeff Parker, Buffalo's first-round draft choice, who ended up being Keith Tkachuk to the Winnipeg Jets in exchange for Dale Hawerchuk and Winnipeg's 1990 first-round draft choice, who ended up being Brad May. He was traded in 93, traded in 94, traded in 96. So he moved around. But regardless, he was on NHL Network's top 10 U.S.-born players. One of the best pure defensemen, offensive defensemen in hockey history. Having over 20 goal seasons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times in his career. So last year that he actually played for the Sabres was 1989-1990. That was pretty sure that was the LaFontaine era. I could be wrong on that. Maybe that was a little bit before then. Probably, yeah, I think it was a little bit before then. But I want guys that can understand the culture of this city. And when I talked about who could be available for the Buffalo Bills, one of the guys that was available was Frank Reich. There was talk about Frank Reich when the Bills hired Doug Marrone. There was talk about Frank Reich when the Bills hired Rex Ryan. There was talk about Frank Reich when the Bills fired Rex Ryan. So, 3 separate occasions, Frank Reich was almost, there was chatter. He interviewed him, I think, twice. But it didn't happen. I think Terry Pegula gets the Buffalo Sabres more than he does the Buffalo Bills. What I mean by that, he gets the history. He's a hockey guy over a football guy. I think he understands what Phil Housley brought to the ice as a player. And I think his track record as a coach speaks for itself. Working with young junior players in the USA, he's a big part of the USA brand. He's a big part of building defensive talent. And Nashville has a bit. And I think that he could bring that to the Buffalo Sabres. We need to bring in more defensive talent. Tim Murray said as much himself in the press conference, the end-of-season press conference. And I think that's the direction that the Sabres will go in. They will take a defenseman in the first round with their first-round draft choice. And I expect that to be a big, big step forward for the Sabres in making their playoff run for the 2017-2018 season. Obviously, it's real easy to say that Phil Housley would be a great fit because of the ties to the city, but I think more than that, he could add to the weakest point of our team right now, and that is the defensive side of hockey, the blue line specifically. And I'm not in the minority here. Phil Housley's being talked about by a lot of teams. A lot of teams are reportedly interested. The bottom feeder teams are very interested in bringing in Phil Housley. They know that playoff hockey teams need solid defense. You need to be able to out-muscle, out-hustle, out-check, and out-physical your team. Be 5 times as physical as the team that you're going up against on the ice in playoff hockey. And I think Phil Housley has a lot of experience in that. I don't know if the players are quite responding to the lessons that are being taught to them by Dan Bylsma, and that is my biggest worry about Dan Bylsma. Are the players not responding? Do they not care? Do they not have any motivation? Phil Housley's a guy that can motivate, and I like that fit for the Buffalo Sabres. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, part 2 of today's show. Phil Housley could possibly be a guy of interest for the Buffalo Sabres, and he is a man of big interest for this Buffalo Sabres fan. I think that would be a perfect fit in the city of Buffalo and for the Buffalo Sabres. Tune in for part 3 as I'm going to preview UFC 211, the event that takes off May 13th as Stipe Miocic puts his heavyweight title on the line versus Junior Dos Santos. Stay tuned.